How's my complexion? That pale, huh? Jesus, I bet I look like a ghost. I'm still in shock, I think. Feel like I've bled out 2 gallons. I'm sorry to ramble, but it's just that I'm... what's the word for it? Detached? Strange feeling. Seen it enough times in the field. After all I've been through, I figured if I was going to experience it for myself, I would have experienced it by now. I feel like I'm floating outside my body. Just cut the cord and I'd float away. Did you see the crime scene? No. Do yourself a favor. Don't. Don't even look at the pictures. Don't even touch the file. You'll thank me later. I can't get my knees to stop rattling. Is that why you're holding onto your coffee like that? I'm shaking the table, aren't I? Hold on for a second. Let me back up my chair. There, that's better. Thanks, Hob. Can you confirm for the record that you're waiving your right to an attorney? No, I'm still not interested in an attorney. I mean, yeah, I'm waiving my rights. Sorry. Are you sure? Yes. Let the record show that Detective Hobson and Millgate, retired, has waived the right to an attorney. I won't need a lawyer after the DA stops puking and considers taking it public. There's no way they're showing that to a jury. There's nothing harder than mercy sometimes. I did what I had to do. It just happened to be hard and ugly. Are you hungry? No. I think I'd just puke again if you gave me anything. Are you ready to begin? No, but as ready as I'll ever be. What led you to the crime scene on the night in question? Would you believe that I was planning a fishing trip before this all started? Never mind. It was a reporter. Name Stacey Bamer. She contacted me a week ago by email and claimed she had new information on the Discroll murders. I was a lead investigator, and I'm sure you know the case had gone unsolved for 20 years. Case was cold as ice. I thought it was a gag at first. You know how that can be. Most of the time it's not even on purpose. Everyone thinks they know something that will crack a case wide open. The Driscoll murders were a big story around these parts. Over the years I must have gotten a couple of hundred fake leads. I handed the investigation over to Detective Warren Carroll when I retired, but I didn't want him to be bothered by any fake bullshit. I know he's busy with all that new gang activity that's going on. Since she contacted me, I figured I'd check it out for him as a courtesy. I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. I met her for lunch at the Perrier Cafe. She was a good-looking blonde gal, so she didn't fit the typical profile of a hoaxer. Not that I put too much faith in profiles after 40 years. She might also have been one of those creepy gals that get off on death. God knows I've dealt with enough of those. She seemed normal enough, but I still thought she might be pulling my leg, or maybe she had been fooled too. But she had a file with her. It contained what appeared to be a confession by the Discroll. Well, he wasn't a murderer, was he? I really do wish he had been, you know. It would have been so much better for everyone. Can you please fill us in on the relevant details of the Discroll case? Let's see, would have been 20 years ago by now. As I said, 20 years ago there was a disappearance. Thinking of all those years, 20 goddamn years. That's a long time. Take your time, Hob. Thanks. The Discrolls were a family of 6 in the suburbs, upper middle class. Father was an attorney, mother ran her own business selling pottery out of the house. Even had her own kiln. 4 children, all high school age and below. Good kids, on a roll, no criminal record to speak of. The oldest son was caught smoking dope at his high school once, but nothing besides that. Just the typical stuff you find when you look at people too closely. They disappeared October 13th, 1994. No trace was found of the bodies. That's why it made the press go crazy. You still see it show up in some of those unsolved mystery shows. A whole family disappeared and no one saw a thing. No one knew where they went. A neighbor lodged a sound complaint, which is how we found the scene. There was an alarm going off and the neighbor called it in. Figured it might have been a fire. When no one answered the door, the patrolman went in to investigate. There were obvious signs of a struggle in the youngest daughter's bedroom. The bed had been flipped over and the sheets were torn. We found elevated concentrations of carbon monoxide in the fabrics of all the bedspreads except for the youngest daughter's. The alarm was a carbon monoxide detector, which is how we knew to look. The neighbor indicated that the sound had been going on for over a day, and he'd been unable to get anyone to answer the door during that time. We also found several aluminum canisters and some hoses in a dumpster a few blocks away. At the time, we assumed the Discrolls had been gassed and disposed of at a different location. Excepting, of course, the daughter who woke up at the end and put up a struggle. The investigation gave no leads. Of course, our first thought was that the father did it. We checked it out, but he didn't have motive. No leads to check out. Same thing with the mother. Surviving family checked out clean too. The father had a few clients who might have had motives, but the means weren't there. Was a divorce lawyer, but not for anybody who could have taken out the entire family without leaving evidence. There was a chemistry teacher who lived 3 blocks away. We investigated him for a while because of the canisters, but he alibied out. Same with the dentist who lived nearby. The wife had an online flirtation with some kid out in England, but nothing adulterous, and he wasn't even in the country at the same time of the murder. We settled unhappily on the idea of a random killing. Hardest pieces of shit to catch. We must have sunk tens of thousands of man-hours into this case, tracking down leads. The canisters had been stolen from a laboratory 10 miles away, but there was no security footage. We couldn't find any leads on the thief. After more than 6 months, the investigation went cold. The Discrolls had been knocked out and abducted. Like I said, no one ever found bodies. Who was to say they hadn't just run off? Until, well, you know the rest of that. I'd rather only talk about it once. What can you tell us about how the investigation wound up with Miss Spamer? She'd been following the case for some years, both personally and as a reporter. Like I said, it captured the imagination of a lot of people. Even seemingly normal folks thought it could have been aliens, ghosts, or demons. Miss Spamer published a retrospective on the murders, given the 20-year anniversary. It caused a renewed interest, which happened from time to time. As usual, I declined to comment, citing lack of new evidence. I remember her asking me for my quote though, which is why I accepted the lunch meeting. After publication of the article, Miss Spamer claimed that she'd been sent a file. She wished to have me authenticate. The most pertinent part of the file was a confession. I assured Miss Spamer that such false documents were not uncommon, especially on an older case like this, and that I'd personally heard 24 confessions of the Discroll murders. She was insistent. Once I felt that she wasn't trying to pull a hoax on me, or getting off on the idea of talking about a murder, I agreed to that meeting. She stated that it had been mailed to her, in the same envelope she showed me for when we met for lunch. Can you describe its content? Old newspaper clippings outlining the progress of my investigation. They seemed appropriately yellowed, so I'd guess they were from the trophy book of the perpetrator. There were also 6 photos alleging to be the individual members of the Discworld family, as well as several other photos of the facility where they had been taken. My hands won't stop shaking, see? I'm trying as hard as I can. I just can't make it happen. I'll have to ask the paramedics for a sedative when I'm done with the statement. I don't think I'll be able to sleep otherwise. No, I'm fine for now. I don't want anything to interfere with my recollection for your recording. Just carrying it around my head feels like... Sorry. I'll stay focused. The photos were of the Discworld family, of course. At the time, I didn't know that. The family had aged poorly, and they could have been anyone. It was very hard to distinguish features. However, given the elaborate nature of the file, I figured it did warrant a further look. As for the confession letter, well, it was brief. It gave an address. That's the first thing I noticed. I couldn't locate the address online, which meant it had to be old. The confession letter said, "Stop printing lies. I never killed anyone. It just took a while to get them ready for breakfast." There was no signature included. I just remembered something. God damn it. We got sent a breakfast menu a month after the disappearance. Someone had drawn a red circle around the picture of pancakes. The letter said, "They're not dead, they're getting ready for breakfast." We put it in the junk lead file. Oh God. Detective Milgate, do you need a moment? I'll have to ask the paramedics for sedative when I'm done with the statement. Can you, make sure they're ready with one? This is going to be rough. We did try and track down that menu. Could never really find where it had come from. It wasn't any place local. The identifying information had been cut out. Why did you decide to personally investigate the location mentioned in the letter? I wanted to make sure it wasn't a hoax. I still wasn't convinced. I had had 20 years of people sending me fake evidence. I guess maybe the case captured my imagination too. I always imagined one day I'd think of something I'd overlooked that solved the whole thing. Felt unbelievable to have someone dump the whole thing into my lap. I needed to see it with my own 2 eyes. Miss Bamer had pinpointed the location with the city records, but neither of us were sure if it was still there. It was an abandoned industrial building. The last time it had had a valid mailing address was 50 years ago. It might have caved in for all we knew. I think I also wanted to be the one to crack it. Whether or not it was dumped into my lap, that case was hung over my head for 20 years. Miss Bamer and I agreed to meet there the following morning. Can you describe the crime scene? Yes. It was an industrial building, as I stated. Approximately 120 feet long by maybe 45 feet wide. It was a wooden structure, and at first the condition seemed to match that of the neighboring buildings. However, I noticed the facade had been recently patched in a few locations. Further investigation also revealed that the entrance had been chained and locked. My understanding is that it used to be a sheet metal shop. At least, Excuse me. Is there a bucket? Might vomit.